My 12 years with Viktor, my partner, turned into a quiet emptiness, without a single spark to warm my soul. But Ethan, his son, my stepson, brought with him something completely different. His hand lingered on my wrist, and I didn't pull away, even though I knew I should have. Instead, I stood there, as if frozen, as if my feet were fused to the floor. The door clicked shut behind us, and suddenly Ethan was so close I could feel the warmth of his presence. His eyes swept over me, lingering where they shouldn't have, with a look that seemed too bold. I knew I needed to pull back, to say something, to break this strange, tense silence between us. But the words stuck in my throat, as if they refused to come out. "There's only one way to find out what's between us, Isabella," he said, his voice calm, almost casual, but it held weight. We both knew this wasn't just a conversation, it was a game, and we'd already gone too far. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to speak. "Find out what?" I asked, even though the answer was already pulsating in my head. Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if my question surprised him, but the corners of his lips slightly lifted in a smile. "You know it," he answered quietly but confidently. There was something wrong in that moment, something that screamed danger. But what was even scarier was that deep down, I didn't want him to stop. My days with Viktor felt like that second kind, a lovely, polished room where the air had gone still, untouched by real passion or connection for far too long to count. Ethan, Viktor's son, with his sharp, perceptive eyes and a youthful energy that seemed to gently chide my own fading spark, became that flicker in the dim glow of an old movie theater. I never thought a regular Thursday night, just another in the countless evenings spent in the refined, golden cage of my 48 years, would turn into the crack that started to unravel my carefully built world. Viktor, my partner for a dozen years, was off somewhere else, as usual, caught up in a business dinner, a late flight, or some pressing matter that always overshadowed our quiet, shared routine. He was a decent guy, successful too, but his presence in my life had become more like an idea than something I could actually feel. Our apartment, all sleek and modern with a view of the city's cold, twinkling lights, felt less like a home and more like a perfectly arranged exhibit in a museum. So when Ethan, Viktor's 22-year-old son, asked me to catch a movie, it didn't seem like anything more than a nice way to pass an empty evening. We'd had a few outings like this since he moved back to the city after college, simple hangouts that filled the gap left by his dad's constant absence. Ethan was easy to be around, his lively spirit a bright contrast to the dull hues of my everyday life. He was an athlete, full of natural charm, with a warm, genuine smile that seemed to light up everything around him. I loved his youthful energy, his straightforward way of seeing things, and how he talked about his dreams with a fire Viktor had long swapped for corporate meetings and spreadsheets. I'd always been at ease with who I am, happy in my own skin, but I never expected Ethan's attention, when it fully focused on me, to feel so overwhelming. That night, something shifted the moment we walked into that grand, old art house theater downtown, a place from another time, with plush velvet seats, ornate plaster walls, and the quiet reverence of movie lovers. Maybe it was the film we picked, a brooding noir with shadowy, rain-soaked streets that echoed the subtle sadness I often carried inside. Or maybe it was just the simple, jarring truth that I was suddenly, uncomfortably aware of Ethan, not as Viktor's kid, but as a man in his own right. We settled into the back row, like we usually did, where the darkness felt thicker, wrapping us in a private, shared bubble. Being so far from the rest of the crowd gave the moment a kind of closeness, like we were the only two people in that big, shadowy space. At first, everything felt normal, the same as always. He grabbed the popcorn, or doves, as he called them with a chuckle, and I got our drinks. We shared a few quiet giggles over his sly comments about the over-the-top previews. I sank into my seat, ready for a couple hours of easy, forgettable entertainment. But as the movie's tangled story played out, a different kind of story started taking shape in the darkness next to me. I noticed his arm on the armrest we shared, brushing against mine more than seemed accidental, a quick, warm touch that lingered. At first, I thought I was imagining it, blaming the late hour or the moody shadows, but when his hand drifted closer, lightly grazing my knuckles, I knew it wasn't just in my head. My heart gave a sharp, sudden jolt. I froze, every nerve in my body buzzing with awareness. I could have pulled away, shifted my hand just enough to create a safe, subtle distance. I could have laughed it off, tossed out a light comment to break the tension. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, my breath quickened, and a strange, unexpected heat spread through me, settling deep in my core. His hand stayed there, a gentle, questioning touch that stole my breath, my thoughts spinning in a wild, messy whirl. The cinema's darkness became our silent partner, cloaking us in a private world where the air felt charged. The pull between us was almost something I could touch, a live current humming in the small space that both separated and linked us. I couldn't bring myself to meet his eyes, I just shut mine, giving in quietly to the moment. It was wild. I knew that deep down, he was Viktor's son, practically a kid compared to me, a whole lifetime younger. But his nearness, the thrilling, forbidden pull of what might come next, made it impossible to break away. My body seemed to have its own mind, answering some unspoken call, while my brain scrambled to catch up. I bit my lip, trying in vain to calm the nervous excitement racing through me. The movie kept playing, just a blur of images and sounds on the far-off screen, but I couldn't hear a thing. All I could focus on was the man beside me, the faint pressure of his hand, the clean, youthful scent of his skin that felt both unfamiliar and magnetic. I risked a tiny glance, opening my eyes just a sliver, and saw he was watching me, not the movie, his face lit by the flickering glow. His look held a mix of curiosity and something else, maybe a hint of triumph, with a small, barely there smile curving his lips. No one else in that dim theater seemed to notice the quiet drama playing out in our little corner. But for us, in that moment, nothing existed beyond the edge of our shared seat. When the movie ended and the lights came up, we sat there, stunned and silent, as the credits rolled. The magic had broken, but its echo hung in the air. We didn't say a word on the drive home, yet the tension between us was heavy, almost suffocating in the tight space of the car. I knew something had changed between us, something permanent. Now the question was, what would happen next? And even scarier, what did I want to happen? 8 days later, a text from Ethan popped up, casual as ever, found another flick, an old French thriller I think you'd like. You free Wednesday? My heart didn't just speed up, it felt like it froze for a split second before kicking back into gear with a sharp, unsteady beat. The movie Ethan mentioned, one I'd vaguely heard of, was known for its tangled characters and heavy, mind-twisting tension, and I knew, deep in my bones, that he was fully aware of the loaded message behind his choice. Even so, I said yes, firing off a quick asterisk sounds like a plan. Wednesday's good, before I could overthink it or let my better judgment scream at me to stop. The days leading up to it were a whirlwind of nervous excitement mixed with self-scolding guilt. I kept replaying that first night at the cinema in my head, picking apart every look, every brush of his hand, every rush of that forbidden warmth. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment, a trick of the shadows and being so close together. But I wasn't fooling anyone, least of all myself. Wednesday rolled around, wrapped in the sticky heat of a summer evening, and we met at that same old art house theater. This time, picking the back row felt less like our usual habit and more like a deliberate choice, charged with purpose. The theater was nearly empty, just a few scattered people, which made the air feel both vast and impossibly close, heavy with unspoken tension. From the second we sat down, I could feel Ethan's eyes on me, a steady, piercing awareness that didn't let up. The movie started, its black and white scenes flashing across the screen, filled with shadows and hidden longing. But the real story, the one making my heart race and my hands clammy, was unfolding right beside me. Every line of dialogue from the film, every secretive move the characters made, seemed to mirror the dangerous, silent pull between Ethan and me. He didn't hesitate long this time, his hand reached for mine in the dark, not with last week's cautious testing, but with a calm, sure grip. His fingers wove through mine, a bold, claiming move that sent a tremor racing through me. Then his other arm brushed against mine, sliding along the armrest, his touch sparking heat wherever it landed. When his hand settled lightly on my waist, I didn't pull back, instead, I found myself leaning in closer, almost without thinking. His breath was warm against my ear as he whispered, "Isabella, you're all I can think about," his voice thick with something deeper than just a young guy's crush, something raw and real that caught me off guard. I didn't say anything back, my actions did the talking, giving in to the moment. I tilted my head, my cheek grazing his, and then our lips met. That first kiss was soft, almost curious, like a question hanging in the air. But it didn't stay gentle, it grew hungry, urgent, pulling us deeper. His hand pressed against my back, drawing me closer, our bodies fitting together like they belonged. While the movie's characters grappled with their made-up feelings, we were lost in our own real, unguarded drama, hidden in the theater's darkness. His hands moved carefully, almost with reverence, tracing the curve of my hip, then down my thigh, his touch somehow both innocent and knowing. It sparked something wild in me, a mix of burning desire, gnawing guilt, and a reckless, joyful rush I couldn't hold back. We moved together, slow at first, then with a growing need, our bodies falling into a quiet, instinctive rhythm that matched the film's moody jazz soundtrack. The thought that someone might notice us, even though the few other people in the theater seemed clueless, only made the forbidden thrill sharper, the awareness of what we were doing electric. When the lights came up at the end, signaling the end of our stolen moment, we were still catching our breath, our bodies trembling slightly. We pulled apart, staring at each other with wide, knowing eyes, both of us realizing we'd crossed a line far beyond just a movie night. The days after were a dizzying blend of nerves and buzzing anticipation. Every glance Ethan and I shared at home, when Viktor was off on another trip or even when Ethan just stopped by, carried a weight only we understood. The apartment's ordinary spaces, the kitchen counter, the living room couch, the narrow hallways, felt alive with the secret we were keeping. What happened in that theater's darkness couldn't be ignored, it had changed everything between us. So when Ethan suggested another movie, another night out, my hesitation was just for show, a weak nod to the rules I no longer cared about, or maybe didn't want to care about. I knew, with a cold certainty, that this next time there'd be no pretending, no clinging to innocence. We walked into the cinema like any normal pair, a woman and her partner's charismatic son, just catching a film together. But the second we left the bright lobby and stepped into the theater's velvet dark embrace, that pretense fell apart. The movie itself didn't matter one bit, it was just a backdrop for the real story we were there to play out. The true drama, the one making my heart pound against my ribs, was happening between us. We took our usual back row seats, a quiet agreement that this was our stage. I could feel him so clearly, the slight pressure of his leg against mine, the faint scent of his cologne, the way his eyes seemed to cut through the darkness to find me. From the first second, he turned to me, his intentions unmistakable. His lips crushed into mine with a need that stole my breath, no longer asking but taking. His tongue explored mine with bold curiosity, while his hands started their own journey across my body. There was no space for doubt this time, no room for guilt to creep in, not yet. The air between us was thick, charged with an electricity that drowned out the world beyond the velvet darkness of the cinema. All that existed was the moment, raw and all-consuming, a pulse of life that seemed to rewrite the rules of everything I thought I knew. There was this overwhelming need, to feel close, to feel wanted, to feel truly seen in a way I hadn't in years, perhaps ever. His hands, steady yet tentative, slipped under the hem of my blouse, his fingers brushing against my skin with a warmth that sent shivers racing down my spine. Each touch was a spark, leaving trails of heat that lingered, igniting something deep within me that I had long buried. I gasped, a soft, involuntary sound escaping my lips as my back arched instinctively, drawn toward him as if pulled by some magnetic force. His touch grew braver, more assured, as if he were mapping the contours of my body with a quiet reverence that belied the urgency simmering beneath. I couldn't hold back the soft sigh that slipped out when his lips found the sensitive spot on my neck, just below my ear. His kisses were a potent mix of gentleness and barely controlled fire, each one deliberate, teasing, as if he were savoring the moment as much as I was. The warmth of his breath against my skin sent a ripple of sensation through me, my pulse quickening as I tilted my head to give him better access, a silent invitation I hadn't planned but couldn't resist. I pressed myself closer, my body molding against his, feeling the hard lines of his youthful frame, the lean strength of him, so different from the familiar but distant presence of Marcus. His vibrant energy seemed to flood into me, filling the hollow spaces I'd grown accustomed to ignoring. It was intoxicating, this vitality, this sense of being wholly alive in his presence, as if he were pouring life back into me with every touch, every breath. We moved together, our bodies locked in a desperate, silent dance, swaying to the rhythm of the film's dramatic score that pulsed through the darkened theater. The music, moody and intense, seemed to underscore our every movement, its crescendos mirroring the rising tension between us. His hands roamed with a quiet confidence now, one sliding along the curve of my waist, the other resting lightly at the small of my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. My fingers found the fabric of his shirt, clutching at it as if it were the only thing anchoring me to reality, though reality itself felt like it was slipping away. The world beyond us, the scattered patrons in the cinema, the flickering images on the screen, the muted hum of the city outside, faded into irrelevance. There was only this, only us, caught in a moment that felt both eternal and fleeting. His lips left my neck, trailing a slow, deliberate path along my jaw, each kiss a question, each pause an answer. I could feel the rapid beat of his heart against my chest, matching the frantic rhythm of my own, and it was as if we were no longer two separate beings but one, bound by this shared, reckless surrender. The darkness of the cinema wrapped around us like a cocoon, shielding us from judgment, from reason, from the consequences that loomed just beyond the edges of this stolen moment. His hand slipped lower, tracing the curve of my hip with a touch that was both tender and possessive, sending a fresh wave of heat coursing through me. I bit my lip, trying to stifle the sounds that threatened to escape, but it was no use. Every brush of his fingers, every press of his body against mine, drew me deeper into this forbidden dance. The film's score swelled, a haunting melody that seemed to echo the chaos of my emotions, desire, guilt, exhilaration, all tangled together in a knot I couldn't unravel. His breath was hot against my ear as he whispered my name, Eleonora, the sound of it low and intimate, like a secret meant only for me. It sent a shiver through my entire body, and I turned my face toward his, our lips meeting again in a kiss that was no longer hesitant but hungry, urgent, a collision of need and longing that left me breathless. We were no longer just two people sitting in the back row of a cinema. We were a storm, a collision of forces that had been building for too long, now unleashed in a cascade of touches and whispers and stolen breaths. His hands framed my face, his thumbs brushing gently against my cheeks as he deepened the kiss, and I felt myself unraveling, giving in to the pull of something I could no longer deny. The intensity of it all, the heat of his skin, the rhythm of our bodies, the way his eyes held mine in the flickering light, was overwhelming, yet I couldn't pull away. I didn't want to. In that moment, I was no longer the woman trapped in a gilded cage, no longer defined by the quiet, predictable rhythms of a life unlived. I was alive, burning with a fire that threatened to consume everything I was, everything I had built. And as we moved together, lost in the shadows of that forgotten cinema, I knew that this was only the beginning of something far more dangerous, far more beautiful, than I could ever have imagined. Every touch, every caress, every quiet sigh pulled me further from reality, blurring who we were and where we were. The intensity built with every stolen kiss, every lingering touch, like we were caught in a dangerous, thrilling game neither of us wanted to end. We were crafting our own beautiful, reckless downfall, and I couldn't look away. As the movie ended and the theater lights slowly brightened, we sat there, staring at each other in quiet, the heat of what we'd done still wrapped around us like a heavy cloak. No words were needed to grasp what had just happened, what it meant. We both felt the pull, a raw, unstoppable force drawing us together. We walked out of the cinema, our hands clasped, a small but bold act of defiance against the world outside. That dark theater had seen more than just a secret moment, it had cradled the start of something deeper, more intense, more tangled, and neither of us was ready to let it go. Since that pivotal night at the movies, something between us had shifted for good. It wasn't just the charged glances or the touches that were clearly no accident anymore, it was the shared certainty that we'd crossed into something profound, rewriting the unspoken rules between us. When Viktor was off on another of his endless business trips, our days at home were a strange mix of normal routines and this undercurrent of forbidden anticipation. On the outside, we kept up the act, especially if the staff were around, but our smiles had secrets, and our small talk carried meanings only we could unravel. Every time we passed each other in the hallway or crossed paths in the sprawling, empty penthouse, his gaze felt like a physical touch, brushing against my skin. One night, I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, the familiar routine grounding me against the storm of feelings swirling inside. Before he even said a word, I sensed him there, a shift in the air, a warmth that seemed to fill the room. He stepped close, his presence both soothing and agonizing, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what they want and isn't afraid to reach for it. "Got plans to turn in early tonight, Isabella?" he asked, his voice low and intimate, like a secret meant just for me. My hand, clutching the coffee filter, trembled slightly. It wasn't just a casual question, and we both knew it. I glanced at him, pretending to be confused, but those dark, piercing eyes locked me in place. "Depends," I said, aiming for a cool, detached tone that didn't match the chaos I felt inside. "What's on your mind?" "Maybe," he said, a slow, knowing grin spreading across his face, "we could watch something at home this time." The silence that followed was heavy, stretched tight with everything we weren't saying. My breaths came slower, each one deliberate, like I was bracing myself, or giving in. The idea wasn't just tempting, it felt like something we couldn't avoid. But the thought of it, the reality of what it meant, sent a shiver through me, part fear, part thrill. I slid onto a stool at the kitchen island, saying nothing, my silence screaming yes. Later that night, with the city lights sparkling like scattered stars outside the huge windows and the apartment hushed in Viktor's absence, I was with Ethan again. No big screen or rows of theater seats this time, just us, the faint glow of the TV, and an air so thick with tension it felt like it could swallow us whole. He flicked on the television, some random movie playing, but neither of us spared it a glance. His nearness was like a brewing storm, its energy building, ready to break free. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but it hit me like a shout. "You know this isn't just some fling, right?" I didn't answer right away. I'd known it since that first hesitant touch in the cinema, but saying it out loud felt heavier, like it would make it all too real. "I know," I finally murmured, the words a quiet confession, laying the truth bare between us, fragile and dangerous as the desire pulling us together. In that moment, I realized with a cold, clear certainty that there was no going back, no way to unchoose this path. The movie played on, ignored, its flickering light dancing across his face, sharpening the intensity in his eyes, the strong line of his jaw. No words were needed, our silence spoke its own language, full of longing and the weight of what we were doing. His hand brushed mine, a light touch but loaded with purpose, sending a spark across my skin. "Don't leave me," I whispered, the words spilling from a deep, lonely place inside me. "We shouldn't," I added, my voice weak, a half-hearted nod to the rules I was letting slip away. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze never wavering. "Then tell me to stop," he said. I didn't. I couldn't. The air grew thicker, heavier, like the universe itself was pushing us closer. A heartbeat passed, then another, until the distance between us vanished. His hand moved slowly up my arm, leaving a trail of heat that made my breath catch. My breathing grew heavy, labored, not the sharp adrenaline of a movie thriller, but something deeper, scarier, thrilling in its inevitability. "It's not just wanting you, is it?" he asked, his voice blending certainty with a raw, vulnerable need. I shook my head, words failing me. No, it wasn't just that, it was a desperate hunger for connection, for feeling alive. His hand lifted to my face, his fingers tracing my jaw with a gentleness that felt almost sacred. His breath brushed my lips, but he held back, waiting for my signal, my final surrender. My heart pounded wildly, caught between crushing doubt and the exhilarating certainty that one more step, one more word, would change everything. We'd already gone too far, broken too many lines we shouldn't have crossed. I shut my eyes and let myself fall into it completely. When our lips met, there was no rush, just a slow, deliberate dance, bold in its quiet intensity, like we were savoring something sacred. His hand slid to my waist, drawing me gently closer, while the movie hummed in the background, a forgotten melody to our private, forbidden story. The kiss wasn't rushed or awkward, it was careful, purposeful, like we were stepping onto dangerous ground we both knew was risky but couldn't bear to leave. My fingers gripped his shirt, searching for something solid as the world around me spun and tilted. When we pulled back, just a breath apart, our exhales mingled in the dim room. My chest heaved, my breaths quick and unsteady, and his piercing eyes held a fire that sent a shiver down my spine. "Tell me to stop," he said again, his voice low and smooth, more a challenge than a question this time. But I couldn't find the words. Stopping him would mean shutting out the only thing that had made me feel truly alive in years. My silence was my answer, a heavy, unspoken choice that settled everything between us. His fingers traced along my back, their touch soft but electric, sparking something deep inside me. There was no hurry now, no rush, just a quiet, knowing exchange where every touch asked a question, and every sigh, every inch I gave, answered it. The movie ended, its credits rolling into the void, unnoticed. But we were still caught, willingly, deeply, in our own unfolding tale. Outside, the city thrummed with its restless pulse, oblivious to the quiet, earth-shaking shift happening in our apartment, lit only by the cold, distant glow of the ignored TV. When we finally pulled apart, we locked eyes, the raw, terrifying truth clear: we'd stepped over a line we could never uncross. I stood first, feeling his gaze trail over me, heavy and possessive, as I moved toward my bedroom door. I paused for a heartbeat in the hallway. "Good night, Ethan," I murmured, not looking back, but we both knew this was far from the end, it was just the start of a beautiful, reckless plunge.